When it comes to the world of investing content on YouTube, you'll often hear the phrase, one global ETF is all you need, one fund is all you need, or one ETF to rule them all. But in this video, we're going to explore that idea a bit further. Is one fund really all you need? Put simply, to answer the question up front, yes, for some people, one global fund may well be enough. But also, there's always other things to consider, and there's a lot of situations where one fund certainly isn't all you need. And we're going to go through those things in this video. But first of all, before we get into those reasons, we'll cover why global ETFs are so popular and why they're so hard to beat for most investors. As always, these videos are not financial advice. I'm simply sharing information. When investing, your capital is at risk and past performance doesn't guarantee future results. So what is a global ETF or global fund? Put simply, it's a fund that contains stocks from all over the world. They typically contain thousands of stocks, maybe 3,000 plus, in both developed and emerging markets. This is the first key point here. Some global funds are branded as global, but they only contain developed markets. For this video, we're taking global to mean ETFs, funds that contain stocks from both developed and emerging markets. The most popular ones are market cap weighted global funds. Market cap weighted meaning the greater the market value of a company, the greater the weighting it has in the fund. So, for example, at the time of recording, a global fund would be 60 to 65% USA, just because it's so massive in terms of market capitalization, and then 35-40% rest of the world. Biggest countries after the US will be the likes of Japan, UK, Canada, Australia, other European countries, and emerging countries like China, India, Brazil. The list goes on. Typically, a global fund has about 45 to 50 countries. There's a few different indexes that global funds track, the most popular being the FTSE All World Index and the MSCI All Country World Index. There's subtle differences between the two, and that is a topic for another video to deep dive into those differences. But for the vast majority of people, it's not worth knowing these differences. It is really tiny, and they do the same thing for the most part. It's just two index providers. FTSE Russell and MSCI both have their own global index that ETF providers track. So why are global ETFs so popular? It comes down to a few key reasons. The most obvious one being diversification. You're getting instant diversification in your portfolio. You're not betting the house on one stock, one country, one sector, one theme. You're getting exposed to the whole world of stocks. Diversification matters because it lowers the risk of your portfolio. If one company goes bankrupt or if a bunch of companies have a catastrophic results and dip significantly, then if you hold a global ETF that contains thousands of stocks, it's not going to be as much of a drag on your portfolio. It's still going to matter, but just nowhere near as if you had a sector ETF or just even invested into a few individual stocks. That could be catastrophic for your portfolio. With a global ETF, it dilutes that and it rebalances automatically. So as companies do poorly, others do better, and it rebalances accordingly depending on the market value. Other key pros of global ETFs are the low costs. Nowadays, you can get global diversification for incredibly low fees. There's a bunch of options below 0.2% total expense ratios. And the last main reason why global ETFs are so popular is because they have that behavioral advantage. They're really easy to stick to because they're hands-off. You're just accepting you're getting the return in the global stock market. You're not doing anything fancy. You're not trying to beat the market. You're just basically saying with a global fund, I want the return of the global stock market. Whether that be positive or negative, that's what you're going to get. There's less decisions to be made. There's less tinkering. Because you're just letting the market decide the weights of each company with that market cap weighting, there's no active decision in that part. And therefore, for these reasons, global funds are tempting for beginner and experienced investors alike. And to quickly summarize why they're so hard to beat and why they work so well for most people, it's because the market, for the most part, is incredibly efficient. And there's a lot of data when it looks at active funds. Most active funds, over the long term, fail to beat their index benchmarks. They may have periods of outperforming the market. There may be some star fund managers, but finding those star fund managers and whether they continue to beat the market is another question. And with the return of the global stock market, yes, it might not be as exciting as the top performing funds that year, but it's consistent. You know what you're signing up for. You get those low costs. And that comes on to the main reason why active fund managers may struggle is that even if they are good at what they do, the cost of those active funds basically increase the level of which they need to outperform the market. If a global tracker has a 0.1% fee, but an active fund manager has a 1% fee, then it needs to outperform the market by more than that fee difference just to actually deliver any premium to investors. And that's where the big problem is. A 1% annualized premium is massive over the long term and very difficult to do. So based on those things, I've kind of sold all the positives for a global ETF. Diversified, low cost, simple to manage, behavioral advantage, and most active fund managers fail to beat them over the long term. So it's looking like a pretty compelling proposition. But what's the other side of the story? When might one global fund not be enough? Now, the biggest point that's often overlooked with this is risk. A lot of videos on YouTube assume that people want to be 100% equities. And we've even got to the point now where a global fund is considered a low risk option. But we always have to remind ourselves that a global fund is still 100% stocks. Yes, it's low risk compared to individual stocks, but that's just a different point on the scale entirely. 100% equities should still be considered a risky option. Because if we just look at this Schroeder chart as an example here, this is a developed markets fund, not global, but it's a very good chart to illustrate my point. This is MSCI World, a developed markets index. So since 1972, it's had a minus 10% dip 31 times and breached minus 20% 10 times. So when you invest into a global fund, you're still signing up to a lot of risk, a lot of volatility. And if someone invested into a global fund not knowing this, and you can see some years where it dipped by over 30%, nearly 40%, if you went into a global fund not knowing this risk, this volatility you're signing up for, then it happens, you're going to be panicking. And we shouldn't always assume that 100% equities is suitable for everyone. So this leads us nicely onto a risk framework. How do we think about risk? And there's three separate components. There's risk tolerance, risk capacity, and required risk. So risk tolerance, this is all about how you feel. It's the emotional side of investing, the behavioral side. How would you feel if you logged into your investment portfolio one day and saw it was down by 10, 20% since the last time you checked? Some people can't handle that, and therefore 100% equities probably isn't suitable. A lot of people, if they saw that, would panic, and it's pretty scary to think that your life savings, the money you've worked hard for, can dip by that much. So risk tolerance is all about that emotional side. How much risk can you emotionally take? Risk capacity, on the other hand, is how much risk you can afford to take. So if this is money that you need for, say, a house deposit or it's your emergency fund, then you probably can't afford to take on much risk because, say, for example, I was buying a house next year and I put all that house deposit money into the global stock market. And then, I don't know, global stock market goes down by 20%. Suddenly, it comes down to the time to put my deposit down and I'm 20% down from where I need to be. Not ideal. So in that case, my risk capacity is very low. I shouldn't be taking on much risk at all with that money, if anything, because I need it in the short term. And then lastly, a super important part is required risk. You can go too far the other way. And if you are 100% safe with your money, it's all in savings or it's all in bonds, then you're probably not going to have the level of risk required to achieve your long-term financial goals. It might lose money to inflation, or even if it does beat inflation, it's not going to grow by enough to allow you to retire early, whatever you need that money for in the future. When you take these things together, your portfolio should sit in the middle. It should meet your risk tolerance, your risk capacity, and the required level of risk. To link this back to the point of the video, a global fund may well not be the only ETF you need because we're making big assumptions about risk by saying 100% equities is suitable for everyone. One ETF is all you need. The way you can dilute the risk is with bond ETFs, money market ETFs. And just as a popular example here, I used curvo.eu, a backtesting website, to show how a 60-40 portfolio of 60% global index fund and 40% a global aggregate bond fund. So you can see here the standard deviation for the 100% global fund is 12.33%, whereas for the 60-40 portfolio, it's 7.98%. So significantly less volatile. And if we look at a chart that illustrates the drawdowns, the blue line shows the 60-40 portfolio. And you can see, for example, if we look at 2020, the 60-40 portfolio only went down by about 9 to 10% compared to 16% for the 100% global fund. I hope the differences in standard deviation and drawdowns here shows that there is some merit in adding another fund. And we shouldn't always assume that 100% equities is suitable for everyone. It certainly isn't. And it's definitely not stupid to want to take on less risk. There's many reasons why you might want or need to do that. Okay, so now we're going to move back to the idea that maybe you've looked at risk and you've decided that you can take on 100% equities that's suitable for you. So why might not a global fund still not be the only ETF you need in that circumstances? Well, one reason might come down to diversification. Most global funds, global ETFs, only contain large and mid-cap stocks. For example, the FTSE All World and the MSCI All Country World Index are indexes that track large and mid-cap stocks. So it's missing small caps. So one reason why it might not be the only ETF you need is that you seek that extra diversification and you want a small cap fund as well. You want small cap exposure as well. So in that sense, you could add another ETF to get that small cap exposure. There are global funds that include small caps. For example, the popular one is the Global All Cap Fund, but that is a index fund, not an ETF. So a lot of newer providers don't have that. And in some cases, you might want to separate the small caps from the large and mid caps anyway, so you can tweak the allocations to your desire. The next point comes down to market cap weighting and concentration risk. It's all right me saying that I'm happy with the market return and I'm happy with what the market will deliver. For some people, they look at the weightings in a global fund and say, well, that isn't diversified enough for me. The current market cap weighting exposure that a global fund offers is too concentrated. The top 10 holdings of a global fund, off the top of my head, have about a 25% weighting, which is quite crazy when you think about it, that a fund might contain 2,000 to 3,000 stocks, but 10 of those 2,000 stocks have a 25% weighting. So it may not give the level of diversification that you think it does. It also comes down to the point that I've mentioned already, that the US has a 60 to 65% weighting in a global fund, and you might, for whatever reason, not want to have that level of exposure to the US. There's certainly no right or wrong answer, and I'm always cautious of people that confidently state that they know that's the best allocation. No one knows for sure what the best allocation is. There is a legitimate reason for wanting more funds in your portfolio to adjust these weightings. A few different strategies are equal weighted funds that equally weight each component, or you can have global funds that exclude the US. So for example, MSCI World ex-US funds, that's developed markets fund that doesn't include the US. And you could have a multiple ETF portfolio, for example, an MSCI World ex-US fund, a US S&P 500 fund, and an emerging markets fund. And by holding those three ETFs separately, you can then tweak the allocations to get the desired overall weighting that you want. There's perfectly legitimate reasons why people might want to lower their US allocation. And this is one way of doing it. And another example of a situation where one global fund isn't enough. One global fund assumes that people are happy with that much of their portfolio in 10 companies dedicated to the US. And if you want to tweak away from that, then you're going to need more funds. This leads us on to the next point. And this isn't really a factual or strategic reason. It just comes down to that for some investors, one ETF doesn't satisfy that itch. And a lot of people have that itch for more. They want the portfolio to be more complicated. And we can go too far the other way. But another reason why one ETF might not be all you need is that desire for complexity. You may well struggle with the idea that one ETF is all you need. And for that reason, you may want to have a smaller part of your portfolio or a larger part of your portfolio dedicated to other strategies, be that different funds, be that individual stocks. In that case, you can still build a sensible portfolio that's structured, but one ETF isn't all you need, because if you only had one ETF, you just wouldn't be able to stick to it. That's personally what I do in my portfolio. I'm probably sound like a broken record because I mention it so often, but I just do think it's a great way of thinking about portfolio, the core and satellite approach. A simple global fund in the core, and then the satellites that are smaller positions that allow you to tweak the portfolio, tilt it in a way that you desire, and experiment with different strategies without betting the house. I'm going to end on two quick fire points. First of all, maybe you want some enhanced commodity exposure. Yes, there probably is some gold mining, silver mining companies inside that global ETF, but it's not going to be significant exposure. So you might decide you want commodities, be that a commodity ETC or physical gold directly in your portfolio. And that's another example of one fund is not all you need. For diversification reasons, you might want a larger part of your portfolio in commodities as well, different asset classes. And then the last thing, currency risk, currency exposure. A global fund is going to contain stocks in a lot of different currencies, primarily US dollars, because 60 to 65% is in US stocks listed in US dollars, but also other currencies, euros, Japanese yen, Swiss francs, the list goes on. And this introduces currency risk into your portfolio. So your investment returns aren't going to be the returns of those stocks directly, and these currency fluctuations can increase short-term volatility significantly. In 1 year to the next, your portfolio might differ drastically from the returns of the global stock market because of currency fluctuations between the currency that ETF is listed in and the currency of the underlying stocks. A good example of that is this year, the S&P 500. UK investors in GBP-listed S&P 500 ETFs have seen returns much lower than the S&P 500 index headline rate, because the pound has strengthened against the dollar. So again, for this example, the idea that one global unhedged ETF is all you need assumes that people are happy with those currency risks, those currency fluctuations. To finish up the video, we'll end on the idea that global ETFs are very powerful, and for a lot of investors, they may well be all they need to achieve their long-term goals. But a lot of investors doesn't translate to everyone, and I hope in this video I've outlined a few key reasons why one global fund may not be all you need. It may come down to diversification reasons, it may come down to behavioral reasons, but most importantly, it might come down to risk-related reasons. And I think that is the biggest problem with finance content, is that A lot of it goes into assuming that 100% equities is suitable for everyone. And yes, whilst equities can be great for long-term returns that beat inflation, we should also be mindful of the idea that not everyone is happy with that 100% equity risk. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have I missed anything? What do you think about the idea that one fund is all you need? I can certainly see the pros and cons of that approach. And in my case, it's not all I need because for behavioral reasons, I like having those satellites. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.